And I took a break in the audio track so I can take this part in particular and put it up on YouTube. That is what I do. Welcome to these album reviews that I got for this week, the last week of March, and the first day of April. And I got 6 really good albums to be able to talk about in various forms, which I hope you'll enjoy as well. And first up, I do have to talk about this, and of course I'm going to be talking about something very unexpected with the release of this album this past Friday. I'll be talking about that after the album reviews, so if you want to check out my thoughts on that, please stick around in the podcast, or go check out the podcast version of this if you're just checking out the album reviews. But of course, I am referring to what might be the only release, and I can't imagine that there's gonna be a sophomore album to this for, real life reasons and reasons that happen in the movie. The band Dream Widow, which of course is the members of Foo Fighters, with the self-titled eponymous debut unreleased unearthed album. I'm not sure how to describe it. In real life, I imagine it's going to be the only album that they're going to have, and it just came out this past Friday through Roswell. And when I first heard about Studio 666, I knew that it was going to be a horror comedy that was not going to be good, but it'll be very, very fun to watch. And that's what I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll be talking about that later. But the actual music that they've released for this album, I really thoroughly enjoy. It is great hearing this style come from Dave Grohl and company. You hear elements of Venom, you hear Celtic Frost, you hear Corrosion of Conformity, you hear black metal, you hear thrash metal, you hear stoner metal, you hear all these different vibes going on throughout all these different tracks, whether it's something that's very, very close to grindcore, like the first track in Sino, or it's the 10-minute instrumental song that you hear throughout the movie, which is not, well, I won't ruin it. I was about to ruin it. I will not ruin it. But the track that is played throughout the movie is the last track on here. And it was really cool hearing like a 10-minute plus song with no vocals on it from the Foo Fighters, because I never, ever, ever would have expected that. And everything in between all of that. I mean, again, like if you're looking for slow brooding metal, doom metal, thrash metal, death metal, it's all here. And it rules. It's not the most original thing you'll hear, and you'll be able to cite bands who do it better. But knowing that Dave Grohl took the time with his band to be able to create something like this, kind of like a love letter to horror, comedy, and evil metal, I gotta give him props for that. That is just so cool. And it's absolutely worth your time. It's only around 40 minutes. It's a little over 40 minutes, but I think it's absolutely worth your time if you enjoy all the darker sides of metal. And hearing, unfortunately, the late Taylor Hawkins doing blast beats was something I never would have expected. And of course, I'll be talking about that later. But as far as Dream Widow in and of itself, what a fun release and a good companion album to Probot. So seriously, if you were on the fence about checking out the movie or checking out this album, just give it a chance. Coming up next is a band that's going a little bit under the radar, but hopefully with my help, more people will be able to get attention to this album, and it deserves that praise, which is coming out this Friday. A band known as Entransient with the album Ghost in the Halls. And from what I can tell, it's self-released, although if they are on a label, I do apologize. I searched all over, I couldn't find it. And again, I do apologize. But I have been a fan of these guys for years, and it's so great to see that these guys are putting out a new album after a few years, but it's finally happened, and it's great to see the growth happening in this band. It's very emotional, very dark, progressive metal, but not in the over-the-top proggy kind of sense, more of that Porcupine Tree kind of style, where it's a little more alternative rock, progressive rock. I guess something, like I said, like Porcupine Tree or an Anathema or just really their own flavoring of what a prog sound can really sound like. And I compare to like contemporaries that I very much enjoy, like a band like Head with Wings. If you enjoy Head with Wings, if you remember me talking about them, I think you'll very much enjoy Entransient. I really love the musicianship that's going on here. The songwriting is so well crafted. The production, I really love the production on this album. I think it totally fits what's going on with the album. The lyrics really hit hard. Like, there's some moments I was listening to this and I started to get pretty goddamn emotional listening to it. It really made me think about a lot of things in my life that I'm going through. And I love it when a band can just like hit me like that out of nowhere. I don't see it coming. Even though I'm very familiar with the band, I wasn't expecting to get hit by the music so much as I did. And if it can make me start to weep, that's album of the year material. Like, there's no way I could put this low when it comes to my end of the year list. Like, you make tears come out of my eyes, you're going to be somewhere near the top. And if you check this out, I hope it can hit you on any kind of level like that. And even if you can't connect to it emotionally, hopefully you enjoy what's going on with the music, the atmosphere behind it all. And this is an album I think you're really going to enjoy when it comes out on Friday. Take my word for it. And yeah, again, it will hit you in the emotional heartstrings if you let it. And let it hit you. It's worth the ride. Next up is a band that I've always gotten the name wrong on. Even when I try to look up how to pronounce the word, I hear different interpretations of the word, so I don't know what's correct. So I'm just gonna go with my gut instinct and go with what sounds right to me, and I do apologize to the band in advance. And of course, that band I'm referring to is Falls of Rauros, and the brand new album, Key to a Vanishing Future, which is out now through Eisenwald. Now, these guys have been around for quite a bit now, and they have such an amazing display of black gaze and atmospheric black metal. And with every subsequent album, they've gotten more and more post-rocky as the time's gone on, and this album is no exception. The peaks and valleys throughout this album are absolutely insane. I mean, whether it really hits that post-rock atmosphere, or it goes right into blast beats or in the black metal. Like, the transitions in the movements of the songs just hit you so hard in the feels. And I love it when a band can do that, like I just talked about with Entransient. But of course, this is done in a much different direction. And I think always that this is a band that has garnered the respect of a lot of different bands in the black metal community. Despite having that post-rock flavoring, despite having the black gaze sound to them at times, I never really hear them shit-talked, which I appreciate. I know bands like Death Heaven get constantly shit-talked all the time. I see that happen sometimes with Hard Carry for the Sky, but when it comes to these guys, I'm just happy to see that I see almost always a positive reception to them, and they deserve that. Of course, they don't reinvent the wheel on this album, and not every band needs to reinvent the wheel every time there's a new album. I think that's very stupid to expect a band to do that, and why not just write what feels right to you? And that's what this album is chock-filled with. Dark, heartfelt lyrics, emotional music, some of the best peaks and valleys that I've heard in music in 2022 so far, and overall just a really welcoming, dark experience that also fills you with just the slightest bit of hope. And I think in 2022 we really, really need that. So if this sounds like it's of any interest to you, I implore you to go check out this album. It is available now through Eisenwald, and again, I just think this is a spectacular album, and I apologize for butchering your name. I apologize right now for the remaining parts of these album reviews, as I'm kind of recording this all off the cuff. I do not have a script. The only thing I have is written down the band name, the album name, and the label, and I do my best to just get my real thoughts about everything, and I try to do it in one take if possible. But if you know anything about the show that I do, if you're listening to this segment separately on YouTube, or no matter what the case is, I do get pretty emotional about things sometimes, and I'll be talking about it at the end of this show, where just my mind, my body starts to overpower everything else. I start to get lost in my words. I stutter over my words. Sometimes I repeat things. I've gotten better about that over the past 10.5 years now, but it still happens. And after I do these album reviews, I'm gonna take a little bit of time to be able to just become less overclamped. And I hope the last 3 interviews don't suffer for what I'm going through right now. Just, I feel entirely way too anxious right now, and it's kind of taken over me. So I do apologize in advance if it becomes a little too long-winded or if I start to repeat myself. So I just want to get that out there before we start the second half of these album reviews. Okay, now getting on with the second half here, it is time to talk about the album which I've already talked about in detail if you've heard my interview for the show this week. It, of course, is the Hellacopters with their return album, Eyes of Oblivion, coming out this Friday through Nuclear Blast. Now, the Hellacopters doesn't fall into my normal listening trajectory. Of course, this is a show like Heavy Debriefings where I like to talk about more of the heavier side of things, and of course, Nikki Anderson is responsible for so many heavy bands that are out there, whether it's Death Breath, whether it's Lucifer, whether it's Entombed. But of course, we can't be heavy all the time. And I even have a playlist on Spotify that's called Can't Be Heavy All the Time, which features stuff that I listen to either for giggles or I actually enjoy the music. And it's almost entirely not rock music. I don't think there's one heavy song on that entire list. Sometimes you just want some good old-fashioned rock and roll. And that's exactly what the Hellacopters brings. I mean, whether you're looking for that classic rock and roll sound, whether you're looking more for that 70s and 80s rock sound, whether you're looking for that European rock sound that they are so damn good at being able to pull off. The Hellacopters is just a great band when it comes to fun. They do have some great tongue-in-cheek lyrics for their songs. There's a lot of sarcasm to it, but it's fun music. It's fun riffs. The arrangements are nice and simple. You don't have to go overly complex when you're in a band. Sometimes just a few chords is all it needs. Steven Wilson of Borkman said it great. In Abstantia, 4 chords to make a million. Really, sometimes that's all you need. And the Hellacopters do just a great job of putting together a rock and roll album from start to finish. It's got some indie rock to it. It's got some of that British hard rock style. It's got overall classic rock and roll flavorings to it. And just the tiniest bits of some modern stuff going on as well, too. I really love what Nicky Anderson does. No matter the band, no matter what he's playing, whether he's sitting back on the drums or he's up front with a guitar. He's just damn good at what he does, and he puts the right people together for the right music. And this album is just a nice break from all the heaviness of the world in 2022. And I think we really need that. It's the kind of album you just sit down, kick back, grab your favorite kind of beverage, and just relax to. And damn it, we need something like that. And if you checked out the interview, if you're just checking out this review, and this sounds like it's up your alley, go check them out. And of course, check out their back catalog as well. But of course, check out Eyes of Oblivion coming out this Friday through Nuclear Blast. Up next, we're going to be talking about some classic new wave of British heavy metal in the form of the band Satan with Earth Eternal, which is also coming out this Friday through Metal Blade. And again, Satan is exactly what I just described. That classic new wave of British heavy metal sound. They can get a little thrashy at times, a little bit of that classic heavy metal style, but they are just a really fun band. I wouldn't even call them evil, despite the fact that they have a band name like Satan and all the lyrics that they talk about, but it's not like on the extreme end of things. I mean, you're not going to hear any death metal or black metal or any kind of extreme metal here going on. Like, if you like the classic bands of Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Saxon, Motorhead, even some Venom, I'd say some Venom is in there, but not nearly as extreme. I mean, Satan was a part of that crowd, and it's just awesome to see in 2022 that they're easily one of the bands from that era that is still putting out some of the finest music out there for the genre. Other bands have kind of become more or less stale. Some bands have really gone off the deep end with trying to be different, and sometimes you just need to write the music that you want to write, and Satan fits right in with that line of thinking. They write the music that they want to play. They have no reason to deviate from the norm. It's just that great classic new wave of British heavy metal sound, and I really just can't describe it better than that. It's a fun album. It sounds like an album that came out in the 80s, and I mean that in the best way possible. Just chock full of great heavy riffs, catchy as hell choruses, instrumentation that is just so friggin' underrated. Satan is just an incredible band, and maybe the band name throws people for a loop. But if you're not one of those people, if you are adventurous enough, or if you've just never heard of the band before, and it sounds like it's of interest, I highly, highly recommend checking out this album coming out this Friday through Metal Blade. Earth Eternal is just that classic heavy metal album that we need in 2022. And finally, we have a band coming in from Finland, coming back with their sophomore album, their first album in 11 years. A band known as Superdeathflame, and the album Dead is Dead. And it is out now through Inverse Records. And I just gotta say with Inverse, they create a great platform for Finnish music, no matter style. From Finnish southern rock to the most extreme metal, they cover it all. And I'm so happy to see a band like Superdeathflame can come to my attention, because I get promos through Inverse Records, and I get to hear something that's this awesome. Superdeathflame is back with their sophomore album, and it's just a great mellow death album from start to finish. There's a lot of great modern moments to it. There's a lot of great heavy, brutal moments that are going on throughout. There's some nice speedy sounds. There's some nice doomier sounds on here. There's some modern stuff that's going on, but overall, it just has that great mellow death sound that you expect from Scandinavia. The choruses are ultra super catchy, the riffs are so memorable, the vocal lines are just awesome. And despite, taking 11 years off in between albums, I really hope people get to check this one out, because I remember checking out that album back in 2011, and I loved what I heard, and I waited so long to hear something back from them, and then I just kind of completely forgot. But now with Dead is Dead, I got reminded of how awesome they are, and seeing the change that happened throughout the band too, because you can clearly hear the change that's going on throughout the band, whether it's the lineup, whether it's the style of music that they're writing. It's just so great and memorable. To me, it's like a modern take on Dark Tranquillity and Omnium Gatherum. It hits both the darkness and the light combined together, add a little bit of modern tinges in there that you hear in modern metal. Maybe something like, kind of like industrial kind of stuff. Like, I'd say like Dagobah is a great example of that, where sometimes they kind of spice in those modern metal flavorings to it, but done just enough to not be overbearing. And in some songs, you don't even hear it, but you do hear it in the beginning and sprinkled throughout. But overall, you're just getting a nice, amazing piece of Scandinavian melodeath here. And I've been on a melodeath kick lately, and Superdeathflame came across. I've gotten to check this out, and it's an album that I just keep going back to. It reminds me of those classic melodeath albums. And it's done in such a way that just like, it really, really brings you back in time, despite it sounding like a modern album, which I truly, truly appreciate. And if you're a melodeath fan like I am, if you appreciate that great melodic death metal, I cannot recommend Superdeathflame more. And be sure to check out Dead is Dead, which is available now through Inverse Records. And that's it for the album reviews for this week. Hopefully one of these 6 albums, if not all 6, kind of tickle your fancy in some way. I'm going to take a couple minute break here, but if you're just checking out the album reviews on YouTube, I'll see you next week. But if you're keeping up with the podcast, I'll see you in just a second.